Okay. Can you guys all turn your microphones on so we don't make it happy through the beginning again? The notes from last month were a little bit difficult to transcribe.
Thank you.
Okay. We are ready. Mr. Chair.
Welcome to the January 22nd installment of UIDRB. Our next meeting will be Thursday, February. Ooh, I need a new printout. What day?
12th. No, that's a business meeting, sorry, 26th.
26?
Yep.
Okay. I need to get you sworn in.
Yes.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Stephanie Kensler, Planning Division.
Thank you very much. Would you like to call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Mr. Mather,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Reeds,
Yes.
Mr. Sublett,
Yes.
Mr. Smansky.
Yes.
We are without Mr. Fleming tonight, but we do have a quorum.
Did everyone have an opportunity to review the minutes from last month? Any changes, updates? No? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve minutes from last month.
I will second.
That was a second by Mr. Smansky.
Sure.
Yes.
Maybe two.
Okay. Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Mr. Mather,
Abstain?
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Reeds,
Yes.
Mr. Sublett,
Yes.
Mr. Smansky.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We don't have anyone from the public who'd like to speak, so you want to get right into it?
Yep.
That brings us to KCOA 26-00003, 2016 North High.
Yep. All right. This is 2060 North High Street. The site is the entire block at the northeast corner of North High Street and East Woodruff Avenue, west of Tuller Street, south of Framby's Ave, with the exception of the Donato's Pizza and PJ's Sandwiches buildings. The applicant is requesting a conceptual review for the construction of a new mixed-use building. The proposal includes the demolition of several potentially contributing buildings on the site, circa 1961 and 1915, as well as several more modern structures, 1988, and the construction of a new 7-story mixed-use building. The proposed new building would include approximately 9,000 square feet of retail, 270 residential units, which is about 865 bedrooms, and then associated amenity space, as well as 260 parking spaces between the underground and ground floor parking. A retail plaza is also planned on the North High Street frontage. The proposal includes abandoning the existing curb cut on North High Street and utilizing the existing curb cuts on Framby's, Woodruff, and Tuller. No variances have been identified at this time. The submission includes existing condition photos, proposed site plan, as well as conceptual use and massing diagrams. I'll go through those here. The applicant did provide a presentation that they want to go through when it's kind of their turn to speak. So I'll go through what we already had and then finish the staff report. And then when we turn it over to them, I'll pass this out and we can go through their presentation. So here is the site. You can see that it's everything but these two buildings here on Framby's. Again, it's the Ohio Stater building, the garage, these associated units, this guy on the corner, and this parking. And here is their proposed site plan. You can see that that curb cut goes away, the retail plaza, and then the demolition of all of those buildings. Here is the massing diagram. Yellow being circulation, red is that amenity space, the retail along the High Street frontage, and then the blue is residential. And then here is that massing diagram in context. And then we just have our existing condition photos. I'm sure everyone is very familiar with the site.
That's what I can see here. Something cool. You done?
I'm sad about that.
All right, with that, this property was rezoned as a part of Zone in Phase 1 and is now subject to the requirements of the Urban Core District, which includes a height limit of 12 stories or 150 feet, or up to 16 stories, 200-foot max, with the affordability bonus. There are no code requirements to step this building down based on the proximity to a 35-foot height residential district. However, staff does note that a certificate of appropriateness is required meaning the proposal should be consistent with the University District Plan design guidelines in the context of the broader policy vision established by City Council with Zone In. The proposal is somewhat consistent with the University District Plan. The plan recommends a mix of uses on this site: structured parking, elimination of curb cuts, and the inclusion of public space where larger setbacks are planned. The proposal is consistent with these recommendations. However, the plan also calls for a building's height and mass to be mitigated through the use of setbacks and building articulation, quality architecture, and materials, specifically stating that rear elevations above 3 stories or 35 feet should be set back an additional 20 feet at minimum, and that relief should be provided where taller buildings abut sidewalks that are 5 foot or less. While a higher intensity development on this site is allowable under the standards of the urban core district, the proposal should be massed appropriately to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Additional height on the High Street portion of the site to allow for the development to step down going eastward while maintaining the proposed density would be supportable. The applicant should consider smaller building blocks like townhomes, low-rise apartment style, etc., particularly on the Tuller Street and East Woodruff Avenue frontages east of Pearl Street. Further, the plan recommends preservation of contributing structures. 2 of the buildings on site are potentially contributing. As such, staff encourages the applicant to explore an alternate proposal that would preserve and incorporate the building at 47 East Frambies. That's the one on the northeast corner, which is circa 1915. Staff could support the demolition of the original Ohio Stater building if the proposal exhibits a high level of site and building design, utilizes quality materials, and is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The proposal should also include an element in the overall design that pays homage to the original Ohio Stater building circa 1961, such as a plaque in the retail plaza, a mural, etc. Staff would request a Habs Light report for the original Ohio Stater building. Additionally, the University District Plan recommends the inclusion of public spaces and landscaping as part of projects. As such, in addition to the proposed retail plaza, staff encourages the applicant to consider a modified site plan that includes publicly accessible green space as part of the overall design. Street trees should be included in consultation with the city forester. Finally, staff notes that the University District Plan includes specific recommendations regarding building and site design, materials, lighting, landscaping, public art, and parking that the applicant should review and take into consideration as the design continues to develop. Staff does not make a recommendation as this is a conceptual review.
Much. Everyone can step up. Who's going to speak? I do need to swear you in.
While we're doing that.
Sure. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Very good. So the floor is yours if you've like to add anything to what the city has given us so far.
Yes, first, thank you, Ms. Kenzel, for that. Want to make sure that you all have the latest and greatest presentation. Great. The next slide.
Oh,
So I represent RPM Student Living. My name is Francisco Rios. We operate in over 27 markets. We own and manage approximately 235,000 units across the U.S. I'm joined by Mohammed Mohsen of Niles Bolton, and we're grateful for the opportunity to present the redevelopment of the Ohio Stater this afternoon. With that, I'll turn it over to Mohammed Mohsen.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. We appreciate you giving us time to review the project at this early stage. I'm gonna start going through some of the slides, and I think I'm gonna skip quickly through the first few because we've covered them with the staff report. Talked about the site location, talked about the urban core mixed use classification. Site is 1.89 acres. And it is bounded by streets on all 4 sides. So as it was mentioned, the only portion of the site that is not captured in the assemblage is the northwest corner. And in addition to that, there's a very small section on the eastern side there that is an alley that we are looking to capture as part of the assemblage moving forward. So it's included on the site plan that you have on the screen. Just to get in a little bit of detail in terms of the overall layout and the approach to the design, we've got on North High, we're trying to put a lot of this is our main frontage, so we're putting a lot of the commercial active use. We're putting our leasing office, our main entry to the residential building is going to be fronting this side of the development. We are still working through the exact programming of the amenity spaces and the retail, and it might adjust and tweak a little bit, but that entire zone along North High is going to be highly transparent, highly active, with multiple opportunities for for doors along the sidewalks. You're seeing here, as we were kind of working the angle of North High relative to the rest of the development, it's got a little bit of an angle to it. We are anticipating in next presentation, we're going to address the street a little bit better in terms of bringing the face of that commercial frontage closer to the property edge. I think there was a comment in the staff report related to the distance from the property line to the face of the building. And so we're going to be making some adjustments. We would still like to create a little bit of a, more of a deepened zone for the sidewalk just to activate the street. We're hoping some of the amenities that we're going to have and some of the commercial is going to have active sidewalk use potentially. And so we don't want to bring the building all the way to the edge of the property, but we are going to probably tweak it some here to make sure that we don't have any portions that exceed 15 feet from the property line. The rest of the sides are fairly close to the property line on the north, on the east, on the south. We talked about the parking entries. The project is 7 stories in total. It's wood construction, 5 stories of wood over 2 levels of concrete. The ground level amenities highlighted and retail highlighted in purple and red here. There's a little bit of grade change along the site. It's lower along the intersection of Woodruff and North High, and then it kind of climbs about 7-8 feet as we get back to the far corner in this perspective. And so we're taking I was taking advantage of that to provide taller floor to floor along North High. And as we wrap the corner on Woodruff, we're wrapping it with active use a little over 100 feet. And that gives us the ability to have taller floor to floor so we can kind of celebrate the use and the ability to put glass and transparency along the edge. As the grades climb to the back, you can start to see in that gray there, that's where the parking deck is going to be located. So once we get past the curb cut on Woodruff, the frontage along the streets is going to be parking. We're going to be addressing that in terms of articulation and screening and openings, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But one of the questions we had, I understand 14 foot is the minimum floor to floor for non-residential ground level use. I'm hoping today we can get some clarity in terms of is that averaging the ground level of the parking? We were hoping to reduce the floor to floor some at the back of the building. So we start with 15, 16 feet of floor to floor at the front where we have the commercial and the leasing office and the amenities. And as we get back, and we gain those 7 feet at the corner, the floor to floor may be a little bit reduced. So if 14 feet is an absolute requirement, certainly we can work the design to provide that. Once we get above the, again, just to recap that really quick. So like what you're seeing, that thick black line that you're seeing, that's where the podium slab is. That's the transition between the wood construction and the concrete construction. And so at the front there, you're seeing the retail, the amenities, and some residential. And then at the back, you're only seeing 6 stories in total of residential, 1 level of parking, and then there's a basement parking that's tucked under. So for the most part, you can't see it. There's a few exceptions where the grades is dropping, where you can start to see some of that basement parking. But once we get to the eastern side of the development, pretty much that parking level is entirely buried. Moving to the next slide. This is again just putting the massing model within the context just for scale, to give you a feel for how it interacts with the context. And then this is the beginning of the new slides here. And so as we were preparing for this meeting, we started to study the zoning ordinance a little bit more and look at the requirements for breaking up the facade. For a building of this scale, we understand there's going to be requirements to break it horizontally and vertically. And so we started to look into the requirements of the ordinance. And we started with the same block of massing that we worked with. And we see this diagram here. We started to break it into these modules to correspond to the requirements from the ordinance. And so here you can see with the dimensions, we're trying to looking at it horizontally, how to, how often to break it depending on the length of these facades so that we can provide the breaks that we have. So inclusion, we've gone through a series of kind of studies, and you can see we're doing insets that are going to be between 6 and 12 feet to qualify as a break. We're doing change in plane that's going to be at least 2 feet in a couple areas. So just taking advantage of a lot of the options that are offered by the ordinance to break up the facade. Next slide. And then after we've gone through this initial exercise, we started to really kind of take each of these modules and come up with different typologies. So we weren't trying to design the entire project just yet. We're really trying to kind of create the language that we would then take back to the massing and try to create the overall architecture and the feel for it. And so this was a study here to start to look at the base, middle, and the cap. We talked about the front on North High is going to be fairly transparent at the street level. This is going to be where the project is mostly visible. So in the typology here on the left side, you're seeing masonry all the way to the top level of the building, or stuff short of the top level of the building. Between the base, which is the bottom 2 stories, and that midsection, which is masonry, we've got banding, we've got detailing with the masonry and special coursing that we're doing to be able to separate the base from the top. And then as we work our way around the building and get to the back of the building, you're starting to see some of the other typologies that we're proposing here, where this is masonry at the base of the building, and then it transitions to fiber cement at the midsection of the building, and then again, accent fiber cement at the very top. If we can go back to that previous slide, the bottom right there starts to show how we're looking at the face of the parking deck, where it's visible at the ground level once we get further east on the side. And so we're looking to continue that same masonry detailing and infill with screening. We understand, this is going to be visible, and so we're looking for different options with the screening to be able to provide visual interest along that edge and avoid the potential for parking to be visible from the side of the sidewalks. And so we'll look at a couple of precedents here in just a minute. No, apologies, the black got really dark on the screen here, but this is going to be a darker gray. This is looking at the typology of where we have insets in the building, between 6 and 12 feet wide, inset 24 inches, how that may start to look. And then a couple of images here with some of the ideas we're thinking about related to the masonry construction, articulating the facade by projecting and insetting the brick in certain areas to highlight it, especially along the frontage, detailing the screen at the bottom left there. We're looking for something that will have enough density to be able to screen the vehicles that are parked at the back portion of the building. And then just a couple of images here that show the fiber cement panel, the vertical reveals that we're proposing at the cap of the building, and just some additional brick detailing that we're referencing here, and we've used to establish some of these typologies that we're hoping to be able to go back and start to really think holistically about the building with this approach in mind. Next slide, I got a couple of really quick slides. So from there, we just highlighting the base, top, and cap. In some instances, as I mentioned, the brick is really covering the base and the mid. And in other places, as we get further back and it's less visibility, we transition from masonry to fiber cement between levels 2 and 3. Again, shows the separation. And then the different types of frontages. Of course, it's anticipated at some point we're going to have certain parts of the project that are going to be geared more towards the back of house utilities, anything that needs to be accessible directly from the street. So we may end up, we're not showing a condition here where we have a blank facade, but there may be some portions of the building that may end up being blank just for the purpose of concealing the utilities behind it. And we see the ordinance has given us a couple options in terms of how we can detail it, whether it's masonry texturing or some sort of a mural. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on that as we make progress. And then lastly here, the last couple of slides, we're looking at the different types of frontages that we have. We have storefront and we have common entry. Obviously, the residential it's a double loaded corridor. It's going to have a front door that's going to be fronting it's going to have the southwest corner as kind of the main entry. It's going to be fronting the main street. And then these are some studies of potentially what we could do at the commercial levels. We are going to try to incorporate additional glazing. We know we need to have 60% at a minimum. And so this was just kind of an initial study to see how we can start to work with brick texturing and transparency and insets and recesses to comply with some of the requirements for the zoning. So really, in a sense, we were hoping to have the meeting here and get some feedback on the overall massing. And kind of while we were waiting to meet today, we started to really dig into the ordinance a little bit more to get a better feel and understanding of what is the intent, what are the goals in terms of breaking this facade and the massing, again, horizontally and vertically with the base mid and top. So we're happy to answer any questions. I've got a couple of questions and clarifications I wanted to get into related to the staff report, but I'm happy to give you all a chance to ask us questions, and then I can come back and ask you if that works better, or I can jump right into those 2-3 questions that I've got.
Can we see if we have anyone from the public that wants to speak?
Absolutely.
Do we have anyone from the public that'd like to speak to the case?
Okay,
No? Okay.
cool. So next we'll get into you all's time to discuss this. I know Lori and Ryan have to leave early. Ryan most pressingly has to leave, so if we want to start with him. And then I also do have written comments from Keone. I'll read those into the record
Okay.
last. But Ryan, if you
I think, for me, I think you have a little bit of a conundrum here. And, you mentioned, hey, we do wood construction 5 over. And I think density at Ohio State, great, like taller, the better in some ways. I think your conundrum here is trying to get the density you want, staying within wood construction, and thus presenting this building that is very closed off, 3 courtyards, and very much feels like a fortress. And I just don't think the reliefs are what doing there. I mean, there's examples of opening certain of the courtyards, so there's a break in the facade. There can be difference in height, but all of that because you can't, I think Stephanie mentioned, going higher on High Street was one. With wood construction, you're not going to be able to do that. So I see where you're limited, but this right now is at Sandwood, kind of the 3 fortress courtyards, all the same height, without any significant relief at 2 feet, 2-foot reveal is not a relief to facade. That's my biggest thing. I have no problem with the density, the height, the demo, the 14-foot. That's what, you have to, those things don't. I think personally, having built a lot of projects at OSU, I think your parking ratio is low, but I think it's close to the code, but I think you're very low. Columbus is not as transit there, but I think there, I'm not going to make a huge thing of that's something you would have to deal with. But as it's formed now, I think there needs to be more breakup in the building is really.
I pretty much echo that. There is no undulation in the heights of the building. I'm very sympathetic for the shorter buildings on taller Freembies and Woodruff. There's no relief for them at all. It's just a wall of masonry and or other building material. I would like to see some type of acknowledgement to those residential neighborhoods. There will be, this feels very much like a creating a dam between those residential neighborhoods and High Street, which I think is sort of a missed opportunity to create engagement with the surrounding neighborhood. I also question, I do echo about how you're using sort of the guidelines in your design. yes, you're kind of showing, we did this, check the box, but you need to really look at site context and understand how to use those to your advantage a little bit more artfully. The other challenge I have is using fiber cement on the 7-story building on the upper levels. I wonder if that's the appropriate material to use. I know that's kind of getting ahead of the game. We really want to get that building diagram done first. The parking, I agree, is low, but if you could solve that in some way by addressing a little bit more bicycle parking or other types of transportation on the site, accommodate that, that would probably solve some of those concerns. I do see that you have some plazas off of High Street. I actually encourage that. I like the idea of creating areas that people can gather, but you do have to meet that transparency requirement of your spaces for any amenities on the High Street. Want to make sure that that's we're activating the street. Also with the acknowledgement that we don't want to have vacant retail on High Street either. So there has to be a really interesting way of creating that activity, and incorporating art is always something I applaud.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, I mean, I echo what both of you said. I would love to see the building step down toward Toller Street, as the staff report mentioned, and I completely echo what Ryan is saying, that you seem to be caught in a conundrum because you can't go taller than 5 stories. Although it would be really nice to have more stories along High Street. The city just went through a rezoning process that allowed that. I think that was pretty hard fought, hard won. So it would be nice to see a payoff there for the city to add the density into the corridor and keep it away from the more residential areas. Separately, I think that your typologies across the rest of the building are very tasteful, but I look forward to seeing further presentations where you add character to the building, because as Lori said, you want to respond to context and you want to contribute to High Street. And something a little less pre-baked would be nice. Something a little bit more unexpected to encourage that activity along High Street would be great.
Comments from this end of the room?
Well, it's sort of the advantage of following a couple other speakers. I had not particularly thought of the fortress metaphor, but it certainly fits, and I think it really captures a sort of impression and concern that I have. I don't think at this point what you've shown us in terms of the breakup, the articulations in the facade really are enough at this point to counteract that monolithic effect. And I also am concerned about the effect of the uniform height in terms of the neighborhood. I thought that the idea presented in the staff report of possibly going higher on High Street in order to give you the option of a little more variety in height in the remaining part of the building was a really interesting idea. In fact, I thought that the staff recommendations were on the whole right to the point, and I really agree.
Hi, I'm Emma. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself real quick, so that way you can understand my perspective. I have a photo studio off of 4th Street currently, and I've owned my own business for about 13 years. And as a small business, something that I'm constantly looking for is how can we add some character to the spaces that are already created? And I understand you wanting to create this this new building and revive the area. And I love the idea of having outside space and courtyard spaces. That is something that I felt like was really needed when COVID happened. And so I'm constantly thinking about how we can have collaborative spaces outside. So I do love that you have that. My question is, is that space available also to the public, or is that something that is going to be closed off? Is the public able to go and enjoy that space when they are entering those retail spaces? And if that's the case, I'd love to see how you kind of incorporate the neighborhood into that. The second thing is, having a space on High Street is a dream of any small business owner. And when I look at spaces that, I want my friends to have or fellow small businesses, having a space that has character and adds a little bit of uniqueness to what you're trying to say is really nice. Obviously, your space is huge. 9,000 feet is gigantic, but maybe breaking it up just a little bit so then that way a small business could go in it would be really nice. Right now, when you're going down High Street, a lot of the spaces that are retail are vacant, and that's just because they're too darn big. And to pay over $70,000 to even just get it to a smaller space before you even make it your own can be a little daunting. So if we could figure out a way to break it up to make sure that local businesses could be there, I think that would be a great addition. They had mentioned having bicycle parking. I think that that's really nice. Link Us is something that is going to be renovating our area, and I can't wait to see how you can give a nod to that from the exterior of your building. I did see that you have some like brick details, and I thought that that was really cool, and that you're also thinking about maybe adding a mural. I have a hard time with the parking fencing. I feel like that would be a major bummer if I lived in one of those apartments in that area. So, what details can you add that make it something that you want to look at when you're walking by? Can you shade it with some of these other landscape details? Or how can you give life to it so then that way you actually want to look at it as you pass instead of looking across the street? But yeah, I'm really excited to see what you end up doing. So there's my opinion. Thank you.
Great.
I think this is a good screen to have up. So kind of echoing the first 3 or 4 comments, and I know it's just gonna throw your 5 over 2, but I gotta say it anyway. One thing that I'm concerned about is these courtyards are so small, they're gonna be dark. I mean, they're gonna really be dark. So you might consider if you lost this bar here and make that a much bigger, it's facing south, it would be beneficial. If this gets knocked down a little bit, it's gonna bring you more morning light, and then just make it up on High Street. And again, I know that's gonna throw a conundrum in your building construction, but I think those things, opening it up and making a bigger space is gonna make the residents that look down on it's gonna make a much more pleasant and usable amenity space.
And if it was connected to a retail space, what a better way to say that you also have this interior retail space that could also be utilized. Think food trucks or something, or a place where you can host events or.
That brings up the issue of public access, which
Yes,
which you
exactly.
mentioned before. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. And then I didn't know, were you thinking about having any like rooftops or, you have one of the best views of High Street there. So, I could see other people wanting to host events. If you look at that courtyard that's right across from the Wexner, something that's really popular is a lot of people host that out. And they have just a little tiny patio. It's too small really to utilize a whole bunch. You can only put a couple tables out there, but I really know that there'd be a lot of people who would want to rent it for various events, even OSU. So I think if you could have some sort of way that that allows the open air to be a spot, I think that could be a great addition as well.
What are your plans? I mean, I know it's very early in the project, but you showed on your an amenity on the top floor in the corner, the northwest. Do you have any idea what that might be?
That would really be a small, like either a study lounge or a small club room that takes advantage of being kind of up high in the building with views on campus. We haven't considered having a portion of that or part of that being out like an outdoor terrace. It might be even an idea. There was a lot of comments about the massing and how do we break the scale, and even though we've done the ins and outs, the parapet line is fairly consistent. So it might be that if we look at an area where we knock something out, it gives you a little bit of an outdoor space that can play a major role in breaking up the massing of the building to try to give that feeling. I mean, obviously we're working through the the layout with the density, and you all mentioned, and you know well, the restrictions of height on, on the wood construction, but we can kind of look for opportunities to just shift the density from one place to another, so that that parapet line up high, I mean, we've kind of played with a foot and a half of up and down, but that the feedback we're getting, we need at portions of it, we need something more. We need to inset more. We need to break that line. So when you're looking at the building from the street, it's not just this single line that runs the entire length of the facade. It just kind of steps in and it creates interest. It provides shadows at times.
And I don't know on the architect, I mean, the thought of trying to go higher on High Street, I know that moves into light gauge steel and but moving the back to getting into 4-story, there's a cost savings on the woods construction there. Obviously, you know this, like, I mean, those are things I think to research a little bit more, knowing that we're willing to say, go up on High Street. Maybe you don't want to entertain steel at all, right? I mean, there's that, but I think that there's ways to reduce costs other ways and get close to the density that you're trying to get without just being a big donut. Because personally, for me, I just don't see a way that you keep your density without going higher at some point. There's just, it's not gonna be able there, because it's not just a 5-foot inset that I'm talking about to break up that building.
Yeah, and I would encourage not to do a planned extrusion throughout the entire facade arrangement. Look at ways to break up the facade that way as a design element. I was just looking, your range of units proposed, you have studio to 6-bedroom. Is there any affordable housing proposed in the property at all right now?
I second that question, yes.
Currently looking at that.
You are looking at,
Mhm.
okay.
One building that, boy, was it a pain getting approved, but and there's things I don't love it, all of it, but at King and Hyde, it took us like 20 months to get that thing. I think what they did do a good job of, though, it's called the Verve. What is that building called? Is it
Verve.
Is it the Verve?
Verve, yeah.
But I think the manner in which they addressed King with like a townhome kind of looking building. And I'm thinking about your western or your eastern edge of, I'm just saying it has to be that, but I think the manner in which they stepped the building fairly nicely down to the west to, what neighborhood is that? It's not Vic Village, it's
Tennyson Place.
Dennison Place, thank you.
Yeah.
But I think there are things about that building from a
And they
massive
still had the
standpoint that
height.
were successful.
They still had the height behind it, but on the street front, it was back enough that it felt.
But I think all that up and down and undulation, it makes it an interesting building. Even from a materiality standpoint, I have a few issues with it, but I think it's a successful building.
I'd also recommend taking a look at the case we did, the church site that we went through many, many reviews
Yeah.
for, but that started out similarly with just being kind of an extrusion of the site. And we got to a place where the massing was more acceptable.
Yeah.
That's almost done, isn't it?
I think so.
Is it? Yeah.
I think so.
And even High and Ninth, it was an extrusion of the site, but they found a way to put townhome typologies on the side street, which is very nice.
Right.
I can send you links to those different
That'd be great.
materials.
I mean, really, this is a suburban multifamily topology dropped into a very urban site. And so I think that's what people are reacting to.
Can we spend a little time on, one of the things we focus internally a lot is maximizing, but simplifying the public realm. And a lot has been discussed on the retail side, on the front on North High Street. Can we talk a little about what you're looking for in terms of transparency? We've always looked to activate that, whether it's areas for folks to gather, making it open, not the blockish kind of retail that you might see now in more of the newer type buildings with retail, but really opening it up. Again, just simplifying it, but again, maximizing that public realm component. Can you give us some color of what your expectations are on North High Street? Right now, for example, you have those 3 cuts or 2 cuts. We'd like to potentially simplify that, make it just the corners are a little bit too extreme. But if you can give us some color there, maybe focus on that, because it is one of the premier locations of this asset.
I don't know why, but there's a building downtown owned by Tomco. It's at Broad and High, and it has like the rotating news sign on the outside of it. But I just feel like they always do a really good job of making sure the outside looks just as good as the inside. They also have a really beautiful outdoor patio that they designed that their tenants can use. It's not open to the public, but I think they've done a really nice job with adding seating options out there. It is also ADA accessible. It has large planters that they have decided to upkeep on their own. And that's been really nice as well. So I'll try and think of a couple other buildings, but you know, the Wexner also has a great open space. I know that you had mentioned pulling the building closer to the edge of the sidewalk, if I understood you correctly, but sometimes keeping that wider is is nice to be able to have, you know, if you just think about the massive herd of people walking to a game, you know, being able to stop and sit at a bench and not feel like you're being walked on is something, you know, to consider, I guess.
You don't have a bus stop in this frontage of High Street, do you?
We do not.
Okay. I mean, I think the activity, the perceived activity, a lot of it has to do with the nature of the tenant. I mean, if you have a really good food tenant that's busy a lot and you can, you know, to the extent you can open it up and you see people, you know, talking and having a good time, and that just adds a lot of life indirectly to the street. So
I know the Ohio Stater had several tenants. Are any of those, you know, potential tenants for your future development?
Yes, we're in conversations with some of them local ones to come back as well.
Because I think there was a recruiter, right? And some of those can be helpful because they've been there forever. So they obviously are going to be successful and continue to be successful. Yeah.
Can I ask one of the things, as we were talking about creating that outdoor space and, you know, but at the same time holding the edge of the street, we've done active use along street edges like this where almost in a way the building has double skin or maybe some sort of a colonnade type feel to it. So like we're still holding and respecting the street, and maybe even if doing something like that and then the residential is set back a little bit behind it, that is helping break the massing. Would that be, is that kind of what we're thinking here in terms
it's
of?
like a covered space that the sidewalk's just covered.
Possibly it could be covered where we inset that, we hold the edge of the building at the front, but we inset the program at the ground level. And we've got a lot of really, you know, fairly active use that we're planning on putting at that ground level for.
Active use, I think it works. I think if it's not active, I think it's like a cave. I mean, I think
I agree.
Right.
I am very hesitant to do that.
Yeah.
There's a cap over a highway on High Street in Columbus, the 670 cap in the short north. And it has a colonnade, and there are active uses there, but it still
It's still
feels
there.
dead 100% of the time.
Yeah, it does.
Because you cannot see what's going on inside. So to your point, your question about transparency, the more the better, in my opinion.
Got it. Okay. Do we think with some of the ideas that are being discussed here, holding the 15-foot from the property edge really gives us very little wiggle room to work with? Is that something where we can look at it as an average instead of it's a maximum of 15 feet? Like for example, where we have these cuts now, it's averaging about 15, but at the deeper portions, at these inside corners, we're close to 25. And so we're trying to figure out, would that require a variance? Would that be something that we should try to avoid just to work with with the requirements of the ordinance, or just your thoughts on how to approach it? Because the reason we were talking about trying to align the face of the building was to try to hold that 15-foot max, but it will certainly cut down on potentially the amount of usable space that's outdoor and external to the conditioned, whether it's amenity space or retail space.
Couldn't you step the building using the diagonal of High Street instead of staying so orthogonal?
We could follow that. We can angle it and then hold the 15 feet, which may give us, it will give us some room, but it will be a shallow space. It wouldn't be a plaza type space, but it would be a widened sidewalk with potentially a great opportunities if a food and beverage tenant was to lease a space here that have great outdoor seating that can fit in that 15 foot. 15 foot is a good bit, but if we're trying to create something that's usable as a public plaza, it wants to be a little bit more.
As far as the technical question about the 15-foot, and then you had another technical question earlier. Those are really going to be questions for building and zoning services. They would be the ones to tell you if it would require a variance. This board does review and make recommendations on variances, but it's really building and zoning services kind of seen. So they can answer the technical questions about the code. As far as what the university district plan says about kind of larger setbacks, is that plazas, courtyards, seating, and other pedestrian amenities are encouraged, particularly where larger building setbacks are in place. So I think that the plan, which is what this body is charged with lifting up, is generally supportive of a larger setback, if publicly accessible open spaces is incorporated. But as far as like the technical, like, can it be more than 15? Does it require a variance? Those would be building and zoning services questions.
Understood.
And I can give you their contact information if you don't have it.
That would be great. Yeah, we would be happy to reach out. Just to answer a couple of other comments really quick, the idea of the parking frontage that we have, and parking, you can put screening and all of that, but it still might look like a dead space when you're walking right by it. The ordinance certainly provides a lot of great examples in terms of like, it may be actually better to conceal some of that parking, and maybe that gives us a great canvas for some sort of a mural wall along the sidewalk, or some sort of an articulated brick detailing or something along these lines that might actually be more appealing for pedestrians walking by. So fortunately here we have good width sidewalks, and we might be able to, between landscaping and actually including some of that solid wall, but doing it in a meaningful way, it might be better than walking by screens. Like, there's going to be, as proposed currently, we've got 3 curb cuts. There's certainly going to be some places where we're going to want to bring the daylight into the parking. May not be able to do ventilation in that case, but it's in the grand scheme of things, that that might be something that we can kind of consider, at least take certain sides and really dress them up. So to that point about it's parking, we can certainly think about some ideas and ways that we can conceal it instead of trying to put it on display by putting screens, and that might be a win-win for everybody.
I have to say, I have mixed feelings about it, in the sense that having some measure of transparency speaks to safety, because if you completely wall it off, then it's not as safe a space. But I think you might consider it could be a little bit of both. So I think it was Pizzuti that did the project in Franklinton, where it's a new, I don't know, it's 4/1 or 5/1. But it's on the structural modules, they've got art. So if this occurs, and I think it's really successfully done. So they're all local artists. So it could be a combination of an opportunity for local art, but you've also got some measure of decorative metal screening or something. There's some transparency of the deck, but not completely so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And that brings the daylight, keeps the transparency for safety, but then gives us sections where we can actually celebrate the facade and do something with landscape, hardscape. I know there was like benches, lighting, like we can do a lot with 10 to 15 feet of solid wall, that would add a lot of interest.
To Mr. Reed's point, I would say that there are some developments on the peninsula that have done some unique things with parking screening, a mix of art or different metals. And I think they also have some proposals coming down the pike with the Downtown Commission that may also be worth looking at some of the ways that they're planning to screen parking in those developments.
One of the more successful parking screening strategies in that area was to use a wood look metal fin.
Yeah.
People are a big fan of.
Yeah, when you're walking by it, you can't really see because of the orientation of it. You can only see when you're right against it. Yeah, no, that definitely. And I know there was a couple of notes about like the outdoor space as currently laid out, the enclosed courtyards, and maybe as we look into the overall massing, maybe some of that gets split. There's always opportunities to move some of that so that there is a small courtyard that fronts the exterior as opposed to everything being interior. So there might be some breaks there, but a lot of it is actually sitting a level above the ground,
Yeah, over the deck.
over the deck.
Yeah.
So like right behind the retail, there's gonna be parking, and we're still working on laying it out, but we're hoping to have some parking spaces that would be available potentially for visitors, that are coming to the building, to the leasing office, but also for commercial. I know there's a requirement for a small number of spaces there, so we're looking at ways to connect if somebody's coming to visit the leasing office, or they go into a restaurant, how do they park? How do they engage with the sidewalks without having to kind of walk through like vehicular entries? And so that connection between the parking that's going to be behind the retail and then back to the sidewalk, that may give us opportunities also to break up the massing at the edge of the street there. So just the elevated ones are going to be private to the residents, but we'd be looking for opportunities to provide that space and not build right to the edge of the street, provide that along North High. So that we'll definitely look into a little bit more as we study. Let's see if there's anything else.
And your comment about the retail is something that we're very sensitive to, right? We want smaller retails to be successful. That's not, we view it as an amenity, not only for the residents, but also for the entire neighborhood. So we're totally on board.
Yeah, and lastly, the one thing from some of the thoughts, like the building looking like a fortress, we'll certainly go back and take a look, and there could be a lot that we can do by just rethinking the location of some of these courtyards. I mean, we talked about, do we combine, do we inset instead of having it all be internal, do we inset a portion of the building so that we have a meaningful step in the building at some point? And that might tie into like the overall architecture and how we break it, because everything that we've done, 100% agree, was like 2 feet in, 10 feet wide, 2 feet out. And so like still from a massing standpoint, if you zoom out, especially when we're looking at these block models from a distance, still feels monolithic. And so note taken on trying to find key locations along the perimeter where a more intentional push could be done to break up that building. So instead of it being one block, it might be done kind of 20, 30 feet from a corner, we inset something all the way down, and then all of a sudden it feels like a series of masses as opposed to this big block that has 2-foot recesses. So that we can certainly approach it from that perspective.
Different question. Staff recommendations mentioned the contributing building on Framby's. Is that, and you'll have to help me in terms of site familiarity, is that accommodated by the cutout on the northwest corner there, or?
The staff report is referring to this guy right here. So it's on the northeast corner.
Okay.
The buildings that are, so this is being proposed for demolition. The 2 buildings on the site that are not included are this guy and this guy. Or gal. So this building on the corner is the one that we were.
Do you have any comments on that staff recommendation about the contributing building on?
What we've talked about internally was potential murals, potential signage. I mean, all the recommendations that you were mentioning were something that we discussed internally.
So the staff recommendation for this building particularly was incorporating it into the development. I don't know if you all want to tell them how you feel about that. I know we with the church project, there was a duplex that we asked them to try to find a way to incorporate that in. And this kind of goes hand in hand with talking about breaking up the massing and having smaller building blocks on the back. There is already an existing smaller building block. So that's just kind of the impetus for the staff recommendation, but you all are certainly encouraged to share your opinion on that. And while we're talking preservation, if you could just let them know kind of what your expectation is for the Ohio Stater building that fronts High Street right now. We were saying.
Brandon, look at that real quick.
Yeah. So we were saying that we could be supportive of the demolition of that, understanding that what it has become is really not consistent with the way the neighborhood is developed. But at the time it was constructed, it was pretty significant to the university. And so our recommendation was just, a Habs Light report and making sure that there's something on the site that pays homage to the significance that it was. But if you all could just please address preservation across this entire site with them, I think that feedback would be helpful.
You have to leave, don't you? You want to go first?
I do. Yeah, I agree with staff on the report for the building. I would be in support of the demolition of the Ohio Stater. The building around the corner, that's the 1920s.
Oh, sorry.
I am challenged by noting that when you said 1920s, it's difficult to keep and maintain these buildings. But it is also a part of the historic fabric that if we continue to eat away, it's difficult to, well, you can't get it back. So I am sympathetic to keeping the building just from that perspective. So I would have to be swayed in a very significant way by the architecture to be able to remove it.
Can you go south, please, Steph? On Toller, yeah.
What would you like to look at?
I just wanted to get a sense of what, it's not just facing north, it kind of wraps the corner a
It
little
does,
bit, so.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it's a remarkable building, but having said that, I think that it's character adding. I mean, it's more interesting than most modern buildings. So again, I would encourage you to look at, I think there's some examples in the University District of where it is a new building, but it architecturally pays homage to what was there before. And I think I think it's an opportunity for you to do that.
Yeah, maybe it adds to the case of reducing the density along this residential side and adding density to the high street side. That's one aspect of this. I agree, though. I mean, I agree with both of you.
I know
You
it's
want to
hard.
keep the building, but at the same time, I don't know about the charm, in my opinion, of that building. So it'd be great if you kept it.
Do you two have an opinion?
I mean, I really like what they said. The Ohio Theater is hard to look at. It is. No offense to the architect who built it at the time, but I think when you walk past, you see a lot of space that isn't utilized from the students who are going to and from places. The back area, I think what is just really nice is the surrounding places that are facing that aren't seeing something that's towering that's going to reflect a ton of light from a screen or something. So I think it really just comes down to character. Like, what types of things can you add to your building to justify why it should be so big? You mentioned lighting. A lot of people, I think, don't really spend a lot of time looking at lighting, and I think it can do a lot. Same thing with the corners of a building, or you had mentioned having some sort of brick or stone. I think of the alleyway that's kind of diagonal from Gay Street downtown. That's like the brownstones, they almost look like. And I just think that that's a great example of how you can create intimate spaces out of something that's so large. So yeah, that would be my opinion on that.
I think for me, first of all, I brought it up because I want to acknowledge the staff recommendation, but also does it provide an opportunity for another point of variety that we've been talking about? And I think obviously it has to work at that level, not simply a vestige of the past, but needs to somehow make a contribution to the to tying this new building into what's existed and what surrounds it.
Mhm. How do you feel?
Understand that comment. Just I'm trying to think about how that could possibly be captured as part of the overall plan in terms of how it integrates with what's being proposed at, especially at that corner of the building. It's going to be a challenge. And you know, as I was thinking, I was saying in some other, you know, in some other projects, we've kind of tried to take like a material from an existing, you know, building and try to reuse it a certain way as part of, you know, just to kind of hint at what used to be, as a nod to what was here before. But we've tried to do that with masonry, 1920 buildings. It is very difficult to salvage. It just crumbles. So we could look at opportunities to see, you know, Francisco, you mentioned like a mural. Maybe there's some sort of, you know, this is going to be one of the corners where we're probably going to be looking at opportunities to provide some art, some solid walls, something like that. And it might be that there is something that could be done at that edge of the parking there in terms of art that kind of a reminder of what was here in a way, or
Or an outdoor space, or
or something like that.
little-
Right.
little walkway for people to walk through. I mean, it doesn't have to be super large, but like,
Right.
you know,
Right.
We don't have the expectation of you solving the problem in the
Yeah.
first meeting.
Right.
Like, it's going to be a process. I mean, they always are.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can think on what could be done there. It's just it's also the location of it relative to like the active side of the project. Like, you know, if this was gonna be where we're gonna have the breezeway that connects the parking to the sidewalk in front of the retail, there might have been something that could be maintained or reused, but this is kind of such a remote corner, like it's the less active side of the development that's kind of at the back, which, you know, all honesty, by the time we work out our service utility, service access, trash coming in and out of the building, I'm afraid that this is going to be, even if we try to celebrate it, it's just going to be on the wrong side of the development.
so I do want to push back just a little. You're like what, a block off of High Street at that corner? You know, you're 2 blocks. You're not that far off from
Right.
a lot of activity. So just make sure that you're really thinking the entire wraparound.
Sure, and you know what I was thinking back here, like, you know, and that's a great point, and I appreciate hearing that, because, you know, maybe we can think about, okay, well, maybe we need to like push some of that to, you know, to the southern edge, and that will be better. I mean, this here could be a great place for a bike. We're planning to put a lot of bike lockers here. And this could be a great place where we could do something like that, where we can reintroduce transparency back at that corner of the building. I mean, these bike locker rooms, sometimes they have a maintenance, you know, station, and it could be really nice, bring some daylight. A lot of times we do cool graphics on a back wall, so it kind of gives the building a double skin there. So that could be something that we could do at that corner to activate it closer to where the activity is. But how this building specifically comes into play, I mean, I think it would be easiest if it's in the form of art. Maybe it is that backdrop to the, you know, maybe it's great for, you know, maybe it's photography, and then as you have transparency, you have the bikes and you have the backdrop walls, maybe there is a hint at what, you know, what was here before. So,
E.
mhm. What do you think, Francisco?
No, we appreciate all the color. I mean, this is, I'll tell you, this site is very special to us, and we want to make sure it's done right. We appreciate the change in the new codification of so we've been very sensitive. We've looked at a variety of different options. We want to make sure that we communicate. That's why we appreciate all the color that you've provided today. Want to make sure it's done right.
Okay.
I did want to add just one more thing. When you are building something this large, it is, I always also kind of think about what is the communication with the neighborhood? You know, how are you communicating with the neighbors? How are you communicating with the people who live close to this? Because really, if you kind of have these same kind of conversations that you're having with us, if you have those same conversations with them, they might have a really good input, or they might be able to tell you something that you didn't realize. So I think if you kind of extend that conversation to them as well, that shines a little brighter when you come in front of us as well.
No, that's a great point, Ms. Parker. And we've started some reach out. We'll also talk to Ms. Kensler about that as well. We've had some preliminary discussions with other larger, for example, campus partners. We talked to them today.
Yeah.
They're extremely supportive of the project. They're very excited. So we'll continue that outreach. That's a great point, Ms. Parker.
it's a premature question, I know, in terms of any specifics, but do you anticipate requiring some variance?
We,
And I'll say, the reason I also represent the University Area Commission, and I'm wondering if we're going to have a chance to look at that, and that comes by way of variances.
We don't know yet. Tim.
Okay.
This was,
I was just curious.
yeah, this meeting was done to take the first cut through the project with the review board, and I'll be working with Mohammed as we go along to fine tune the compliance issues and see if we do.
And I think just to add to Ms. Parker and Mr. Sublet's comment, the 9th and High project was mentioned earlier. That's a mass timber building that's coming. It's under construction. But they, despite this very large project, they got a lot of support from the community, which was helpful. I don't remember, I think they did need variances, but that was just something, I can give you their contact information if you want to just talk to them about their community engagement strategy, because they were very successful despite a very large building that had come before the review board many, many times under different iterations and not been successful. So it may just be worth reaching out to see kind of how they managed that.
Was a sort of unusual approach there where they utilized the University Area Commission in terms of planning and community discussion and input, as opposed to, simply, a list of variances to be acted upon. And certainly the commission is interested in responding in cooperative, helpful ways to help you organize and gather that kind of input if that's something that would be helpful for you.
will definitely reach out. And question for you on that project, they had 0 parking, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 0 parking for,
Agreement with an adjacent garage, not adjacent is probably stretching it, a
Yeah.
nearby garage.
Mhm.
That was their conceit.
got it.
And just as a reminder, there is no parking requirement under the new zoning code, so.
Mhm.
If you all don't have any other comments, I'd like to read Keone's comments into
Okay.
the record. So this is our 7th commissioner who's not here tonight, Keone Fleming. Because this is a conceptual review, we wanted to give you as much feedback as we could. So he did write some comments. I'll make sure these get reflected in the minutes just so that's public record and all the things. But Mr. Fleming shared that in general, I support the proposal. This existing building is not in character of the University District with the suburban style parking area out front. The proposed development is more in keeping with the general evolution of the neighborhood. That being said, the applicant should be mindful of the following: breaking up the mass of the building through articulation, changes in materials, or other aesthetic approaches to reduce the perception of bulk. And as Frank Petrozzulo used to say, not making it an extrusion of the site upwards. Also, be mindful of the urban core requirements regarding setbacks on the rear of the building adjacent to residential neighborhoods. Using materials appropriate to a development of this size. Proper screening of the 2-story parking deck as it faces public streets, particularly at the rear adjacent to the residential neighborhood. And then he just wanted to add a side note, since we've talked about it at previous meetings, the use of EFS and/or Drive It are acceptable in modest amounts. We've had projects, we had a McDonald's project where it was supported because it was more of an accent, as opposed to we had a high-rise proposal at Lane and High where it wasn't really supportive because it was kind of a primary cladding material. So he just wanted to note, as you're thinking through materiality, that some of it would be supportable, but not cladding most of the building in that material. That's all.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions for us?
No, I think this was really great. I may follow up with, it sounds like maybe a couple of the technical questions I have might be more for zoning, and so I can follow up with that in an email. It's just a couple of clarifications for us to make sure that we're on the right path.
Okay, and I'll put an update in the portal that will just be a summary of the meeting and let you know that it's streamed on YouTube if you want to review the feedback before the minutes are available, and then link to the application deadlines for future meetings.
Perfect.
Thanks for coming in.
We really appreciate the feedback. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
have staff approvals?
We don't have any staff approvals this month.
Wow.
Surely that means no one is doing any work on their properties.
Awfully cold, so.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, that's it.
Are we calling it at 5:08?
Well, we do have one item of other business that I did not put on the agenda. I am transitioning out of this role. So Nadine was our buddy. She's going to be taking over as the UIDRB staff person. She wasn't able to be at this meeting, but we're hoping that the transition will be completely in place by the April meeting. So next month, we're going to kind of split the load, assuming we get more than one case. And then in March, she'll run the show, but I'll be here. And then in April, it'll be,
So where do you transition to?
what am I transitioning to? Well, actually, last fall, I was promoted to be one of our planning managers. And so they're kind of trying, Belkis as well. And so they're transitioning us out of this development review role and getting more involved in some of the like higher level projects.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. So I'm still going to be involved as kind of like reviewing Nadine's staff reports and things like that. So you might still see me from time to time, but I just wanted to let you know that we will be making that transition in the next couple
In
months.
my tenure here, you will be, or Nadine will be the fourth, I think,
Yeah.
fourth or fifth.
Did you have Patrick?
No,
So there was Lewis, Belkis, me.
no, it wasn't Dan Fertelman. It was
Oh, that was even before. So maybe more because,
I think Dan was still, I think he was I think. Yeah,
because I think there was Dan and then I think it was Lewis and then maybe
Yeah.
Patrick and Mark Roston tag teamed it for a minute, then Belkis, then me, not Nadine. So, but that's it. That's the only item of other
Okay.
business.
let's adjourn.
Adjourn. 5:10. Thank you all for your time. I'm sure.
It's cut off.